input every... If I gave you a powerful supercomputer...
I'm gonna watch the next video next. So hi, I am Science Tracer. Welcome to another Science Me video. This is gonna be about...
Could you predict the behavior of a single billiard ball? According to a new paper, the answer might surprise you. The idea goes back to Pierre-Simon Laplace. In 1814, Laplace formalized the notion of the clockwork universe that had been in the zeitgeist for a few centuries by then. He suggested that if you just knew the positions and speeds of all of the particles in the universe along with the relevant forces, the entire future would be foreseeable. Of course, Laplace couldn't imagine a computer as we think of them today, so he imagined a superintelligence, a demon. But really, he would have been satisfied with a computer. Now, of course, he knew nothing of quantum mechanics, so there are many objections to the possibility of such a demon. But quantum mechanics is, for the most part, only relevant for very small things. What about a single billiard ball on some random complicated billiard table? Surely...
I end up thinking about Golf Simulator and how they literally have programs that are very close to billiards in random scenarios that operate pretty much how you expect. However, an actual pool table only has a few more components to them to govern their actions, so you just need a little bit better program to simulate it. And nowadays, we definitely have that kind of sophistication capacity.
Given information about the shape of the billiard table and the initial position and velocity of the billiard ball, we could fully capture its behavior, right? Laplace's demon may not be a quantum physicist, but he could at least be a billiards hustler, right? Well, no. At least not according to a recent paper by Eva Miranda and Isaac Ramos. The idea is pretty straightforward, but it relies on a powerful result from computational complexity theory, the undecidability of the halting problem.
This is where I find it to be absurd, because halting is not an issue for any computer program since the 80s. It just isn't.
So, a quick background. In the 1930s, a few mathematicians and computer scientists were studying the problem of halting. Namely, could one construct a computer program that takes as its input a separate computer program and an input for that program, and it outputs whether the computer program ever terminates? A simple example would be the program that just adds 1 to the input every second. Regardless of what number you feed it, it will never terminate. However, if your program, say, divides by 2 until you get an odd number, then the program will always terminate. The trouble is, it was proven that there is no such meta-program that could always determine whether an input program terminates. This is known as the halting problem, and one of the mathematicians who proved this is probably someone you've heard of, Alan Turing. So what does that have to do with billiards? Well, the paper by Miranda and Ramos showed that you could encode any computer program that can be programmed in a Turing machine in the walls of a billiards table, and the initial state can be encoded in the initial position and velocity of a single billiard ball. Then the program halts if the billiard ball eventually strikes a particular part of the table in a particular way, and the output is determined by specifically where the ball strikes. In fact, behind me is the table configuration for a simple Turing machine. Now, of course, we have to do away with friction and other non-idealizations. We're assuming these balls obey the simplest laws imaginable. They go in a straight line with constant speed until they run into a wall.
Literally, we have programs that have progressively, like, they just slow down over time speed, and we just do that, so...
They bounce off in exactly the way you expect. And with those rules, well, a single billiard ball and table configuration is enough to do arbitrary computation. But if that's true, then as a result of the halting problem, it then follows that no matter how good your supercomputer is, you can never write a program that can predict the outcomes of every billiard ball and table arrangement. Otherwise, you would have solved the halting problem. And that means that Laplace's demon couldn't even hustle out the bar.
Okay, hold on. Here's the thing, right? Every billiard ball in any configuration is a set of parameters that you can just preset, and then a program designed to find all of those situations would either find all the situations, which include all the different angles, all the different amounts of velocity, as well as even different rates of changing velocity, including low gravity, or extra slippery, or wind, or magnetism, or going up and down hills, or all of these other things that we have in Golf with Friends. So, being a goddamn egg. You can be an egg. That being said, um, all these different scenarios, if you wanted to calculate all of them and know all of them and be aware of all of the different outcomes, that's one thing. Um, and that program would be basically extensive, but it would halt eventually. This is false. This is just false. This is just nonsense. Um, Especially if you have the supercomputers nowadays, you put this kind of problem towards them, they can totally solve it. And that means they would halt. It is a question with a finite amount of answers when you really consider it, because there's only so many ways that you can change the table, and given a certain amount of velocity, if you have, or a certain amount of initial speed, and the regular constant velocity of a ball going down over time, there's only so many shots that you can program because you can't really go farther than initial speed and the slowdown factor. What if you have no stopping of the ball because it just continuously bounces? Well, that's a different scenario. That's entirely not based off real physics and has no bearing on anything except for you get simultaneous results for that speed. You do one shot, and then automatically, if you end up in, for example, a halting scenario for that program could be that if you end up in the same trajectory as you originally started, like going backward and forward, you would halt at that point because there's no other variance. If there's a deviation by even a trillionth of a degree, you would continue, and you would eventually halt after a long time of many bounces leading all the way through to wherever you end up with. Supercomputers can do this in practically nanoseconds. So I don't know what this guy's on about, but also the people in the 30s had no clue what we were capable of. Simple computing and all of that. Yeah, it's limited. It's not impossible. And that paper is, holy crap, irrelevant. Where is that paper? Yeah, this Turing machine ball test. It includes random, like, straight edges. There's some circular stuff going on. There's some jagged stuff going on. And all represents just variance of where the ball can possibly hit. Now, a constant velocity that never changes, well, huh. The thing is, again, like, what seems, what's weird about this whole scenario is that you have, like, the balls ending up in different positions than what they say, like, the lines don't fully match up. They match up with slight deviation, which is confusing. Because I guess there's a wind there or something else. I don't know. Um, anyway, it was curious, but it's all.
That can be programmed in a Turing machine.
The thing is, computers are still advanced Turing machines. They just work at terahertz per second, which was an oxymoron. I know. Shut up. Um, they work in like freaking extreme speed and with large amounts of tape with whatever amount of thing. And it's not a up down with positive and negative with just simple parameters. It's complex parameters that have an actual like possible scenarios for starting and stopping. Like again, even if you have a consistent ball, there's a way of making, or a consistent speed ball, you could make a scenario where, yeah, if you end up in the same trajectory twice, for example, going forward, and then you go forward again, right? Because let's say you bounce off these two walls twice, right? That would halt it because it doesn't lead anywhere. So that means you would halt it. That's a scenario where you either have the conditions of halting possibility or you have the condition of non-halting, which, like, that's you can just program that now. You know how to do that. Whatever.